Why don't you tell the people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, well, my name is Joe Lavender. I have been interested in Bismarck for more than 20 years. So it's definitely almost an obsession at this point, I would say. But yeah, I got interested in the ship probably through Dr. Ballard's book and Ken Marshall's paintings. Like you can't beat the level of artistry. They look like photos, as you know, with the Titanic paintings that he did of the wreck. It was just captivating, and I think that's what drew me in initially. Is I went from being very interested in Titanic to seeing this other entire world of big ships, and of course that was 1989 when the book came out. What later that year and or early 1990, and it just captivated me, and from then on I was hooked. So, and here we are today. I mean, it's I want to know everything about the ship, every detail, the lives of the crew, paint schemes, anything you can think of. It's just like with Titanic, I'm sure with you. Like it's it, a level of obsession that's hard to quantify.
I can somehow relate. um,
Yes,
so you yourself, though, have become an author as well. You've written your own book recently about
yes. So
Bismarck's
yeah,
captain.
I'm yeah. So through a very strange twist of fate, I met one of the descendants of Captain Lindemann. It was completely random. We were discussing something, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I hear you're into ships. My ancestor was Captain Lindemann of the Battleship Bismarck. Are you familiar?" And of course, he became my new best friend, and he had all of the archives, everything. And he had sent some of it off to the Holocaust Museum here in the United States. And I'm not sure if they've cataloged everything fully yet or even realized kind of what they had. But in sending everything over, he had made copies of everything and, of course, kept a lot of the photos and the photo albums, which were important to the family. And it was just a treasure trove of information and letters. You see Lindemann in these photos, and he's on the bridge of this ship, and he looks so official and very stern almost. But in real life, he was actually a really nice, kind guy who loved to share a laugh, and that kind of came out through these letters. And I just said I got to write a book about this guy. He's so interesting, and he shares that typical arc of German officer from the Imperial Navy through the Weimar years into the Spanish Civil War, where they kind of, tested these ships, and then eventually into World War II. And of course, his story ends in 1941. And it's interesting to see into the life of somebody who is extremely he's written about a lot, but not on a personal side.
Yeah,
From the ship. I mean, he's a very proper officer, but in real life, he was a person, and I found that extremely interesting. So I had to write the book.
fantastic. Yeah, a lot of that stuff is just lost to history, isn't it? It's like these people
It,
just
it
become
is. It's
caricatures.
exactly.
Well, today we're going to do something kind of interesting. We've actually worked together before. You authored
Yes,
the script on our Scharnhorst documentary, which is still one of my favorite
exactly.
videos
Yeah.
we've ever done. So you're our de
Oh, mine
facto,
too.
not just because we worked on it, you're like our de facto Kriegsmarine expert, and we've been hard at work bringing Bismarck into our new virtual experience called Ship Explorer. For the very first time, we think people can now walk around the decks of Bismarck, and I thought, who better than to take us for a tour around the ship than yourself?
And there she is.
So the little intro cinematic play out. A couple of eagle-eyed history experts, yourself included, have spotted straight off the bat a couple of historical inaccuracies. For example, the black and white stripes on Bismarck by this point would have been painted over.
Would have been painted over, yes. They were painted out in Norway.
Right. And that at a certain point in the mission, in Operation Rhine, Prinz Eugen took the lead in the formation.
Yes.
We may fix that up. But we're excited to show off all the detail on the model here. We've been working pretty hard on this.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Here we are on board. Now, I have shown a little bit of this before in the past, but one thing people haven't seen is now you can actually go inside the ship. But before we do that, give us your initial thoughts. Is there, what goes through your mind actually seeing the ship like this?
It's not really often you can see Bismarck from some of these perspectives. I mean, you have computer models that you can have stills looking from different angles, but to be able to walk around, especially with the snow coming down, I mean, it's what it would have been like, as they were making the dash for the Denmark Strait. And you get to look and see these different angles, and some of these angles have probably never been seen since, maybe Tirpitz, but certainly Bismarck, 1941.
Yeah, walking on the ship
you get
is
a
actually
sense of the
surreal.
scale.
Yeah, you do get that sense of scale. It's really
It
surreal.
is huge.
It is really, really big. And I guess what's funny is you get so used to seeing the ship on photographs and things, and then we've all had the Tamiya 1/350 scale model,
Right.
which is tiny, comparatively, but actually standing next to it like this.
I mean, the secondary guns here would be the main caliber guns on a cruiser. I mean, they're just enormous.
So give us a little bit of background. We'll walk back towards the crew berthing area, towards the stern of the ship, but give us a little background on what Bismarck was doing as part of Operation Rhine, the state of the ship, who was on board, just like a little bit of that background context.
So the crew, it was extremely well regimented. There were 12 divisions. Each one of them had a different function, different men, and the Germans followed the British practice of crew messes. So they didn't have bunk rooms. It was hammocks and lockers, and when it came time for the meal, the leader of your mess, which would be several men, depending on which division you were from, engineering or the gunnery divisions, the general crew, they would go get the meals for the rest of their mess. So they would pass the food out, just like you would see on a British man of war during the Napoleonic era. And the crew conditions aboard Bismarck were not great. It was not a comfortable ship. If you were an officer, it was quite nice, but even the officers had to room with somebody unless you were pretty senior. So the men, they had their hammocks. They didn't have a lot of privacy. They had a small locker that was about less than a square meter, and that's all they had. And these ships were designed for the Atlantic. They were Atlantic capable, but extended cruises like Rhine exercise or even Operation Berlin, which came a couple months before, it's not as comfortable as maybe the US Navy or perhaps even some of the ships of the Royal Navy. But as you can see here, we have hammocks. There's not a lot of privacy. There would be lockers along the sides of the walls right there, and that's about all they had. Now, the officers, they had nice cabins, and they were pretty well appointed, and they had an officer's wardroom, which was extremely well decorated. You'd find something like that on maybe not a first-class Oceanliner, but definitely a second-tier Oceanliner. The conditions were not bad. But the crew mainly, they berthed essentially one deck down from the main top deck there. And most of the hatches you see on the deck of Bismarck lead into these, what I would call non-critical areas. Now, during the day, these hammocks would be stowed, so all of this area would be accessible. You could walk through without having to kind of push your way through all of these hammocks.
Yeah, I'm ducking and weaving my way through.
Ducking, and yes, you wouldn't have to do that.
You actually helped.
Battle, these stations would.
Yeah, you helped actually with this because there are very few actual photographs.
So few.
Yeah. We had one picture,
So
I think, was
few.
it Gneisenau or Scharnhorst?
We have a picture from Scharnhorst from the beginning of the war, maybe right before the war. Crew members before the war were given a camera and a photo album, and they were encouraged to take pictures, of course, of non-sensitive areas of the ship. But there are lots and lots of photos, especially of Scharnhorst on her initial trials, even before they had modified the bow and everything to the Clipper Atlantic bow that they had. And that was to encourage photography, to encourage the crew to get to know each other. And it was just something fun to do. And plus, it kept them occupied. So photography for a lot of these people for a lot of the crew was extremely important. Now, once the war started, it was a little more difficult because so much of the ship is. And of course, the crew were instructed, don't take pictures of the radar, don't take pictures, watch the angle of your camera, what's in your shot.
Yeah, we got some pictures around here of like Kriegsmarine weddings and things. We're a long way off at the moment. Yeah. This is turret door, I think. This is the barbette for the final turret on the ship. And then through these big hatches, what would you have had beyond this crew berthing area?
So then you start getting from this area back into the officers' quarters and other miscellaneous officers' spaces, basically. And then as you go further back on this deck, there are washing facilities for the officers. And then at the very stern of the ship, you have the artificial fog, the smoke generator room. Now, that was completely isolated from the ship. You had to actually go up a deck and down.
Wow.
Because if one of those canisters went off inside the ship, you could imagine tear gas, essentially.
Not good. So we're basically following that path now. You could come up out of this hatch
Yes.
or this hatch and then head back. It's this far
Head
back.
back.
Huh? Yeah.
And there it is. That's the access hatch, the large one, and then the two smaller ones are where the two canisters of gas would be placed.
So it could create an artificial smoke screen,
and then she could
essentially?
lay a smoke screen.
Right.
And there are the depth charges.
Probably a little known fact, the ship had depth charges.
Yes. Now, a lot of people think it's for anti-submarine warfare. I don't think you'd want to use a battleship to try to sink a U-boat, a submarine. Well, not one of their own U-boats, but it is believed they were used to create artificial splashes to show off, to kind of confuse I like the captain. He looks great. To throw off the British observers. So they would think the shells were hitting further aft and they would adjust their guns forward and miss the ship.
So the fall of shot looks like they're going way aft. So they'd be overcorrecting.
Yeah, so it would at least confuse them. They fired a 4-gun salvo and they see 6 hits. That would be very, very strange. So she carried about 18 of these. They were stored below decks. But during the final battle with Hood, I think it was probably the shock from the ship's own guns caused them to break loose and roll off the rack. Or some very forward-thinking rating came back and just pulled the pin and let them fall overboard, because I don't think those were a very good idea to just have sitting on deck, but it's kind of a dangerous thing.
Yeah, and it's probably no surprise then.
Prince Eugen had them too.
Yeah, this entire section of stern is missing now, right? It just broke off the ship.
Completely broke off, and that was due to the way the hull had to close back in on itself with regards to the 3-shaft propulsion system that the Germans chose. And it kind of makes for a very narrow closure of the stern. And here we are underwater, which is one of the amazing things about this game is we could just go down and take a look.
Yeah, I just want to make it really nice and clear so I can show everyone real quick.
Yeah.
Because it's quite you can change the weather just like that. It's quite a unique arrangement down here. Where are they? There we go.
And it really is. And it makes for a weak stern. So where the stern broke off was an unarmored section. The Germans knew it was a weak point. When you look at the discussions that they were having as they were designing the ship and trying to decide which propulsion system they were going to use, whether it was going to be diesels, which they pretty much threw out immediately. They were really impressed with the American turbo system, which was the steam turbines running electric generators and having electric motors, like the Colorado class battleships and some of the early carriers. But the Germans knew it was a weak point, and it was structurally unimportant anyway. The only problem is the rudders are right below it. So if anything falls off, you could potentially seriously damage your steering.
I think I remember reading somewhere that the triple screw arrangement was actually fairly inefficient and not that great. Was there something around that? Like the decision making?
And that's why the screws are so big. That's why our propellers are so big, is to compensate for that. To be able to achieve 30 knots at 150,000 horsepower. And then the Germans didn't use a double reduction gear. So they actually spun faster than they should have and cavitated quite badly.
Wow.
And the center screw, I believe, is 1 centimeter bigger than the other two to compensate for some of that cavitation. But the Germans actually felt that a double reduction gear was too complicated, was too complex, which I find kind of ironic.
Given their reputation,
they do love mechanics. You think they would have taken to that, but diesels were dropped immediately. And that was due to the weight. They were much heavier than steam turbines, and they had issues in them in the Panzerschiffe where they had cylinder failures, they had cracked bed frames, and they just felt the technology just wasn't there. So they dropped them immediately.
Interesting. Yeah, it's all these decisions that have to be made, that similar to the design of Oceanliners, it's give and take, I mean, and the one decision can completely alter the vessel's capability and its fate in crucial moments. In Bismarck's case, I think is very interesting.
Well, they were initially trying to stay under 35,000 tons, which was the legal limit. No battleship could be bigger than 35,000 tons, and every country, with the exception of Germany and Japan, tried really hard to adhere to it. The British were probably the most strict with their ships, but the Germans, they were trying, and they'd had this huge gap of essentially a brain drain after World War I. They weren't allowed any of these big ships, so they didn't build any. And then when it came time to build one, they had sort of lost that experience. They built Scharnhorst. Scharnhorst was, nominally 40,000 tons, so they were close. But to carry these big, hulking 15-inch guns, they were going to need a bigger hull. And you see this back and forth with the designers, and then eventually Admiral Raeder, Grand Admiral Raeder, who was head of the Kriegsmarine, going to Hitler and saying, well, we've got to make it a little bit bigger, and we've got to make it a little bit bigger. And Hitler didn't care about his Navy. I mean, he cared about it, but he wasn't interested in it. And he finally just threw up his hands one day and said, we'll find a political solution. Just do whatever you want. I can't listen to this anymore. Just build what you need to build, and I'll find some way to make it legal later on. And you wind up with a 50,000-ton battleship. The 3 screws were there because they were trying to save weight. But then the design had advanced so much, there was really no way to back off from that.
We're now abaft the big funnel, which is quite an impressive structure in and of itself.
The funnel is impressive on the ship.
Yeah, my favorite little inclusion, I never noticed these before, is the little seaplane cranes. I
made sure that they had those in there. I sent them drawings, and you've got to include these. They're so cool.
Yeah, shout out to Dennis, our 3D modeler.
Oh yeah, he was. Oh yeah, the whole thing. But look at that detail; it's all there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. These I know that they had some issues with the big main cranes, which ostensibly would also be used for actually lowering the ships, the big boats here. Is that right?
The big boats, yeah, and the aircraft. And it actually delayed Rhine exercise because the clutch mechanisms on these cranes were incredibly sensitive and they would fail. And there's a picture of Bismarck alongside of a pier and this sad crane just hanging onto the pier, just laying there like it's like it looks like a sad puppy, just completely taken apart. And it was made by a company called DMAG, which is still around, I believe.
Presumably their product is great now.
I'm sure it is, yes. But these cranes, they had a clutch mechanism that was just fiendish, I guess.
Interesting.
But you can see they're quite a impressive crane. I mean, it's huge, but
yeah, these are big and exposed, like fully exposed to the elements as well. And these look like they would have been very wet ships. Like there's not a huge amount of freeboard there.
They were. And the cranes being wet all the time was part of the reason that they were broken most of the time.
yeah, that makes sense. On the topic of aircraft, we do have one of them out here, but now we can actually go inside the hangar and take a look. Why don't we go check it out?
Yeah, let's take a walk inside.
We've got a rousing
I love the music.
March going on in the background there.
Yes.
So this is...
and you can see just how cramped it is.
Yeah, it's tiny. I was about to say, this is a tiny space, but big enough that you can fit two of these big Arado 196s with their folded wings.
Side by side. And every square meter that isn't aircraft would have just been packed with spare parts on the last mission, just crates of stuff. Floor to ceiling almost, and it would have been impossible to do what we're doing right now and walk around.
So all this space would have been used.
And this would have all been Luftwaffe. Yes, it would have been just floor to ceiling with parts.
Can you give us some understanding of like the actual layout or arrangement of the float planes crews? Because I was actually surprised to learn that they were Luftwaffe guys and not German Navy at all. That
they were Luftwaffe. Yeah, everything involving the aircraft was Luftwaffe, and they were allowed to carry Kriegsmarine personnel as spotters, so the pilots would be Luftwaffe. The folks who took care of the refueling, they were Luftwaffe. Everything aircraft was Luftwaffe. And she was originally designed to carry 6. There were this hangar here with 2, and there are 2 hangars further forward, and then to carry 2 stored on the catapults at all times. And that was just too crowded. I don't even know if they ever tried it. But the makeup of the crew for the aircraft was huge, and they had just dozens and dozens of people on board for these airplanes that are essentially never going to be used, and they were used so little. And the catapult that we're standing on here, that would extend out. It looks like one long catapult. It's actually 2 that's divided in the middle, and it's run by compressed air.
Right.
Now, in the final battle, they were trying to launch one of the aircraft with the film. It had the film of the sinking of Hood, the ship's war diary, essential documents, letters home. But in the battle with Prince of Wales and Hood, one of the airlines had been severed, or more than one, and they couldn't get the aircraft off. They said the pilot was extremely depressed after that. I think I would be too, to see a chance of survival in all of this.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm surprised they didn't actually just winch it over the side with the crane, though.
I've wondered that too, but the seas were so rough. It was. They were essentially in a storm in the final battle. I don't know if they could have pulled it off.
Oh, it was in the final battle.
Taken off. Yes, during the final battle, they were trying to get an aircraft off to take this stuff back to Germany.
Wow. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, that's fair. Because the photographs do show like white caps on the waves. It was quite an intense scene.
Oh yeah, the weather was atrocious.
Wow.
And that's one of the reasons Bismarck's gunnery, it starts out okay in the final battle, but they would get the guns dialed in, and then the ship would lurch because it had no steering at that point, and they'd have to recalculate everything, and it was basically at the whim of the wind at that point.
go and check out one of the
yeah.
fire control stations. I love that you can actually get up in here, because this is one of the coolest
I know,
little spaces.
this is great.
The searchlight platform with its little hatch in here for.
And we come up here, and now we're inside. This is probably a view that nobody's seen since 1941. Looking forward.
Yeah, down at the forecastle there, and
You can
then
see
aft.
to the bow. Yeah.
Mm.
What a great place to be stationed. Not in battle, of course.
Not in battle. I was thinking that. Of course, we are also right beneath the ship's whistle, which if we get up through here, we should be able to get a good glimpse at. Should we give it a blast?
Oh, yeah, let's do it. Oh, that's great.
And we just won a Steam achievement for doing that as well. How good.
Yes, there we go.
Now I'm going to go up forward here because we're now getting towards the bridge. The other thing that we can do is fire off a gun
Speaking
salvo.
of whistles, if you look directly above us is the foghorn. So you can see just to the right a little bit and forward.
Oh, yeah.
There, right up there, yeah. There's the ship's foghorn.
We forgot to program that one. We can, however, fire off the guns real quick, and then we'll head down to that
Yes.
fire control station. It's shockingly loud, so cover your ears.
Amazing.
Never gets old.
An 8-gun salvo.
Oh, yeah. Now I just need to go downstairs. And to do that, I'm going to go down here so that we can get to the forward fire control station. So, as I understand it, this is in a pretty sad state on the wreck.
Yes.
What happened?
Yeah, So, in the final battle, this area here, which is some of the thickest armor on the ship, took a direct hit. And that is where Captain Lindemann, Admiral Lutjens, who was in charge of the final mission, they met their ends inside of there. And the rangefinder, which is that cupola on top there, was blown completely off. And everybody inside of the structure was killed or died shortly thereafter.
Wow.
We know this because a little towards the end, many men inside the ship that were inside the forward fire control computer room had come up a ladder that led into the structure. And when they emerged, they could see daylight, which is where the cupola had been, the rangefinder on top, and with the radar attached to it, that was all gone, and they could see up. And when they emerged into a hellscape of destruction and bodies, and it was pretty awful. There were no survivors. After that hit, there was never any communication from the bridge or any of the senior navigation officers to the ship. And when Captain Lindemann was killed, the second in command of the ship, the executive officer, was Hans Uhls, and he took command.
So this is really, I guess, representative, because there really aren't a lot of photographs of these spaces, so we've really had to just kind of go off.
No, and
Yeah.
and they were extremely secret, so that's why. And here we are. I mean, this is where they would fight the ship. Now we're in the forward fire control, which is the auxiliary for the forward. So the second gunnery officer would have been stationed here. The first gunnery officer, Adalbert Schneider, he was in the main fire control, which is at the very, very top of the ship. So this is the C-38S is what it's called. That's what the Germans called it. And it's essentially the machine that gives them the data that they need to send to the fire control computer, which there were two deep inside the ship. And that's where they got their data from, which direction the target was moving, wind speed, all of that stuff was sent down via this system here. And you can see it's basically like an extremely powerful set of binoculars. And this would give the range to the target using those big wings that are sticking out, the ears on the side of that cupola that we're in here. And all of that data would be sent down to the fire control computer, and then that would generate a firing solution, and they would send it to the main guns. And they were extremely efficient at this. The Germans were very good, especially Bismarck's first gunnery officer, Adalbert Schneider, who would win the Knight's Cross for sinking Hood. He was extremely efficient.
Yeah, good gunnery. So we've got the 3 stations, right? So we've got this is the auxiliary, and this is the main station.
One here.
Right?
The main station's up here. Yeah, this is.
And then we do have one.
Now the
final
rangefinder's final at the stern, and this is where Bismarck's senior surviving officer was stationed, Baron von Muhlenheim-Reckberg.
Quite a famous survivor from the story, isn't he? He crops up in most documentaries at some point.
Sadly passed away around 2007, I think, maybe a little before.
Relatively recently. It's amazing to think of this as being like in living memory. Is there anything that, as a student of Kriegsmarine history and the Bismarck and its story, that has kind of surprised you walking around the ship like this, getting to see it in this kind of degree of fidelity and seeing some of these angles? I mean, does anything really stand out to you as something you may not have thought about before, or has anything shocked you?
I think so much of this is plans and drawings, but to see it all together, just how complex this system is. And it's simple in its design, these giant guns to put explosive steel on a target. But in order to do that, you have to have all of this stuff, and to be able to walk around and see all of these systems, searchlights and fire control computers, and these are just the parts from the game that we can access. Minesweeping equipment I can see right here. Just that alone is such a complex system, and to have a crew of over 2,000 young men operating this thing. And I mean, this represents a sizable percentage of Germany's GDP. These things they're expensive. I mean, it billion-dollar machines back in their day, adjusted for inflation.
What always strikes me about these things, and it's the same as HMS Belfast and any of the other museum ships you go on, is, once you get below the guns and you get past all the heavy machinery and stuff, they are like little towns. Like you've got the bakery and the clothes washing shop and the stores, and it, you for most of their careers and lives, these functioned as like accommodations for all the men.
Accommodations for people.
Yeah. You tend to forget. I mean, I think of Bismarck and I think, the engagement with Hood, but she was only in battle 2 times, and she existed as a home for all of these men. And you imagine all the in-jokes, all the culture, all that stuff that was lost when she went. And I also think about the Battle of Jutland, when some of those vessels went up, like the Queen Mary and Invincible, going up in the flash of an eye, the blink of an eye, you just think all of the...
Instantly.
All of that was just lost.
And so many lives, too, and people that, we have their names, but they were more than names. They were people. And you take Queen Mary, you take Hood, Invincible, any of these ships that just were there, and people would turn around and look, and then they were just gone. There's that famous picture of HMS Queen Mary where you see the explosion, the ship is gone, but you can still see the exhaust from her funnels where she had been. She was just there. The steam and the smoke hadn't even dissipated yet.
Unbelievable.
And I mean, these are some of the largest non-nuclear explosions to ever take place, and they're the horrors of what that must have been like.
Yeah,
there would have been very few survivors inside the hull. I mean, there's just the shock of all that would have killed most of them instantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But these are just huge organisms, and like you said, they're towns. They're towns at sea, and you've got how many inches of armor, and it still floats. It's fascinating.
That's the beauty of it. There are so many different ways you can look at the story and get lost in it. It is just like Titanic. I mean, you can study the people, the ship itself, the way it sank. Getting the opportunity to actually go inside Bismarck now is really exciting, of course.
It is.
But we do have plans for another video that we'll shoot together. This one I'm really excited for because this is absolutely your area of expertise, because we can explore Bismarck in her final moments, in the final stages, right before she capsized. I'm very interested in hearing about what was happening around the ship and when, because the final battle is harrowing stuff. Well, that should just about cover it. Did you have any final points, final words?
Definitely a very detailed model here. And you can get a sense, no matter where you are on the ship. I mean, I'm looking at 1,000 things I could go in depth on that it would just probably bore people to tears. But it's so interesting to be able to stand in a spot and just see this huge ship stretching out in front of you.
Yeah.
And just how detailed this is. And it's fantastic.
I'm sure I speak on behalf of the audience when I say that we look forward to being bored to tears by you about all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's why we're here, man. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon.
Oh, no problem.
We'll explore the Bismarck in a final moment. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your friend Mike Brady from Oceanliner Designs. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we get new videos out weekly. If you want to support my work and get really cool perks like behind the scenes and early access, please visit my Patreon in the link in the description below, or sign up as a YouTube member. Come and join the crew. And as always, stay safe, stay happy, and I'll see you again next time.